Hi there, and welcome to the Campfire Project yet again. Today in the panel, I have with me, first of all, Jerome Lamarque, who's from Sydney. Jerome, would you like to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Alan, for arranging these Campfire projects and these amazing chats where, I just, admire you so much where you're doing all this great stuff, and the ripple effect is amazing. So, yeah, thank you. So a little bit about me. I am a business performance specialist working mainly with men, but I do work with women as well. And, really unlocking their inner alpha to just to perform at their peak. I've worked with elite athletes in the past and been a fitness coach, and then the results I was getting in there, I brought into business performance, helping business owners perform at their peak and people in leaders as well. So, that's a little bit about me, and just really looking forward to this discussion, and whatever comes out of it, helping more men to really enjoy life.
Excellent, thank you. And we also have Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz. Kenny, how are you today?
I'm verging on fear. It was really good to have a men's group last night, a full moon. It's all kicking in, and I'm moving into the fear zone because otherwise I'm going to be useless for this little gathering around the campfire. So I'm zoning in.
Excellent. Well, there's those that saw the Campfire panel discussion that went out today. Kenny was on that where we talked about Gillette's ad with the toxic masculinity. And we had a lot of fun with that, talking about and getting an understanding of it. But one of the things that we were talking about, and I thought it was great to have Kenny back on again tonight, was because we then went into the fear that young men are going through when it comes to trying to go out and meet women, how they should actually behave because of all this toxic masculinity stuff out there. It must be terrifying for a lot of the younger fellas. And I know both of you men coach other men. So what have you found in those areas? First of all, Kenny, what have you found there?
Either the blokes are totally ignorant about what's going on and it's got nothing to do with them, and they're in their own world, not really caring that much about what other people think, and they get on with it. And those are the ones that I never see. Or, and I have no idea how many they are. They might be the minority, they might be the majority. See them in the streets. Or there is where do I put myself? Where do I come from? How do I not scare people? Being scared of not scaring people. Being scared of not seeing as harmful or a predator or a creep or a mummy's boy, or, with everything, it's very much, am I acceptable? Am I going to be humiliated, rejected, etc.? Am I going to be reported even? There's a lot of funny stuff goes on with people reporting men for this, that, and the other. Some of it's not even true. So, yeah, there is a lot of fear and confusion about how do I present myself? How can I be true to myself? And how can I stay out of trouble while I do? So it's almost playing small and playing big while playing small at the same time, which means no space to come from in a way.
And what have you found, Jerome?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting subject. So for me, I can draw on, coaching men and the experience of coaching men, and, how one of the philosophies in coaching is how you do one thing is how you do everything. So you see those patterns coming up in sales, in business, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being good enough, and it plays out. And you can actually use metaphors around, dating and sales in the same breath.
Yeah, totally.
So, looking at it and coaching a guy a few months back who was having challenges around girls. And the most important thing men have got to understand is you do not chase girls.
Exactly. That is so spot on. I put out a newsletter yesterday because I run, two main workshops. One's Men Facilitate, to train people to run men's groups, men and women. The other one's called Men Flirt. And it's nothing to do with flirting, but it's everything to do with being authentic and therefore irresistible.
Mhm.
And it works. It works better than the men's groups, and it really pisses me off that it does. But it does. And the main thing, apart from understanding their whole dating history and why and where they've been coming from and what their belief systems are and all of that head stuff, that's fine. But there's a part where they are pretty much in the hot seat and someone videos them on their own phone and they get adjusted. So people after a while know who they really are. They reveal themselves in the group and in the workshop. And then comes the adjustment between who they are and how they come across. So while they're being filmed, it's about what's their face doing, what's their body language saying, where's their voice coming from? Are they actually taking authentic space, or are they being one thing, presenting another thing, and just putting out confusion and then getting back confusion? And I'd say at some level, most people can spot a fraud as someone who's not safe at 20 paces.
Yeah, our gut feelings are very powerful, aren't they? And it's great insights, Kenny. And the thing when you're working with men is that, and you know, I'm talking about my experience as well. I think we all go on a journey of self-discovery, of, you know, putting to bed our self-doubts, and if we're ambitious. And so, you know, understanding, saying to men, get on with your life. Get on with your life. What is your purpose as a man? You know, what kind of levels of self-care have you got as a man? If your own self-care is poor, you haven't got a mission as a man, and you go out chasing women, you're more than end up likely being with the wrong woman.
For the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Filling the wrong hole.
Yeah, so if you're getting on with your life, building something, so the masculine energy is always about building something, and you're building something, what you'll find is the universe has a way of putting the right people around you because you're getting on with why you're meant to be here. You know, and I always help men in focusing on that, and it's that confidence to be you. The confidence to be your authentic self. When you do that, it's like sales. You build a business so people call you, not you chase them. So you have to become an authority in an area. Once you become an authority within your own self as a man, women chase you.
Yeah. It's putting out the right vibe. And I feel the difference is when a man or an individual is unconscious or not present, then the old default script, the old vibes are going out, the old default false script's going to play out. And that individual will firstly need to survive the same old, because if I'm not conscious and default says I will be betrayed, or I will be looked over, or I will be rejected, neglected, whatever it is, then that will play out on one hand. On the other hand, the controlling part that needs to avoid fear, which is very often a protecting part, will think, great, I know my job is to protect this person, so I'll put him through Groundhog Day because I know how to attract that crap. I know how to survive that crap. And he feels safe and in control because he's busy, and there's no fear of abandonment, humiliation, living a creative life, and anything bigger. So I totally agree with you. And for me, on one hand, it's about that self-awareness and coming from alignment. On the other hand, it's being able to respond to bigger things rather than react and make them the same old smaller things. And for me, this is where the fear comes in, because one is love, the other is fear. And a lot of people are so comfortable or so able to be small and in control with their fear that love is just too scary. So that's the fine line that most people around me, I would say, walk. And then remember to adjust into love, adjust into presence and connection, adjust into the place where the man is meeting the world and responding, rather than the fearful boy or the old scripts or stories. And what you said initially, I absolutely love, Jerome, and I find this with my corporate clients, is the business is an extension of who they are personally. So whatever happened in the playground could so easily happen with the business partners, the clients, etc., etc. The way that they were bullied, or the way that they did at school, or the way they were in the family, whatever is unresolved, it's going to play through, because life will say, you want more, then give me attention, release me, because when you've released this trauma or accepted this trauma, then we know that we're safe to give you more.
Yeah, so what I'm picking up from this is then that if you're a young man or you're helping young men, what they need to do first of all is know who they are and where they're coming from. Like that group you were talking about where they actually film them, being able to see who they really are. And
exactly.
Because there's so many groups out there I know who go out and go, okay, I'll teach you how to do, put your body in this particular way, stance in this way. All these things that come across differently. But if you're something in the background, you're not going to remember any of that, are you?
Yeah, yeah. And the best thing is, not only can they see themselves and get what people are talking about, but they get to feel in their bodies when they're coming from who they are. I do a technique called voice dialogue, and with that, people move chair or they stand or whatever, and I get to speak to different parts of them. And I generally start with, I always start with the protector, and the protector was probably there from a time of trauma in their lives. And from then on, very often owns and runs a person until it knows that there's a man part that shows up, and that man part has a very different energy, a very different perspective, a very different posture, a very different outlook, but very often hasn't had the space to show up, or to show up consistently, to show the protector that it can go off duty, or they can work together, or whatever it is. But different parts have totally different energy and can give so much good information. And they are different personalities. So to feel the embodied man, and to feel when the embodied man is not here and then adjust, is in the moment. And as far as the purpose thing is concerned, I know that for me, I have had a purpose, I have fulfilled a purpose, and I have moved into a new purpose, where so many blokes can do I need to find myself, and then I need to do myself, and then I need to buy this new super duper act that's socially acceptable and sell it to other people. And if they're stupid to buy it, then we're all safe together. Rather than, currently, this is who I am, this is how I operate in the world, and this is my current purpose, and there's space for everything to pass.
Yeah. When you're trying to measure up to somebody else's expectations, you're never going to be happy, and that person's always going to know that something's going on. You never have a great relationship. If you want to find somebody who matches you, then you've got to be you to start with. Or otherwise, how can you find the person who matches you? So knowing who you are is extremely important.
And well said, Alan. Well said, Kenny. And I think we have to understand as well, when the thing about comparison and when you're working with a man is, usually, and working a lot of times with elite athletes, is when we compare, we usually compare the worst of us with the best of them. So everything becomes, so then we build up these stories in our mind. And when we talk about fear is the assumption that something bad is going to happen in the future. So when we look at it from that, if you're comparing the worst of you, and we've all got sides that we can improve on, but when you elevate that person's talents with the things that you think you need to improve on, you've already now lost the game. You've already gone into the arena defeated, because you're not looking at your good points. You're not looking at your talents. You're not looking at your nurtured skills. So it's understanding that's what you bring to the fore, in your mindset, and understanding that when you move forward. The other thing is understanding, if it's a guy and a woman, it's understanding when we work from the reptilian part of our brain, a woman is looking for the best kind of mate to evolve. She's looking for safety. She's looking for security. Now, if you're a man on your mission and you're building something, automatically you become something that is desirable from an evolution point of view.
That's it.
Yeah. So the best things, and I love what you said earlier, Kenny, the best things we can do in life is work with nature rather than work with our ego.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
If you work with nature and you get on with it, what you'll find is you'll live more in flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, there's one thing we find with, we look at personalities, for instance, every trait that we have an upside and we have a downside. The downside is the one that gets triggered when we're under stress. And that's the one that we focus on the most, as opposed to focusing on the upside of the trait where we've got that strength. If we're able to do that and know where our strengths are, well, the downside, you go, okay, I just don't go into that environment that triggers that.
Yes.
So instead of like being at school where we focused on you're bad at maths, so you'd spend all the extra time doing maths to get better at maths on something you hated doing anyway, to then go and find a career in accountancy or something, which you're not going to enjoy it. But the whole process is that if we go after what we have as a strength and we nurture that, we're happier doing the stuff that we love doing. And we're then focused on ourselves, but we turn around and we go, okay, well, I see the worst in what I am. I compare it to everybody else, and I've created a fear that didn't exist before, but we've now created ourselves.
Do you know, I've got two things on that, if I may. One of them is I noticed that so many times I and the people around me can feel fear. And I think fear is a natural, normal feeling that can come up and that can pass. And it might be because of external circumstances, or it might just be a feeling for some reason. And I feel that as women have menstrual cycles, men have, well, not womenstrual cycles, but moonstrual cycles. And when there's a full moon, or when the full moon is brewing, it's like the emotions come to the surface. And fear can come to the surface. Vulnerability comes to the surface. And generally when that comes up, it's like, I feel something. I feel fear. I feel uncomfortable. And rather than it being a raw feeling that's passing, then it would be very normal to go into the head for a lot of people and think, why am I feeling this? And then there will be justifications, stories, and vehicles for the fear, rather than it be a passing emotion. And very often, I would say, a lot of men can put it into financial fear, because that can be justified irrespective of how much money there is. It's the relationship to it, or something to do with health, or something to do with relationships, or whatever story can be made up is made up to justify the fear. And then the fear is this entity that needs fixing, that somehow I've held on to and made a thing out of, almost made a personality out of, rather than fear is here, fear is passing. The other thing I feel is fear for me. I noticed every October I'd go on a major fear downer. And I used to think it's because of the weather changing and the darkness and what do they call it? Seasonal affective disorder, SAD. But then I moved to Australia. I moved to Fiji, and in the Octobers, there was a similar thing. And then I realized there was some sort of a background cyclical fear. What could it be if it's not the weather? So I followed the feeling back rather than getting into my head and avoiding it or fixing it. And I realized that October was when nasty things happened in my childhood, when we had to go into hiding because we had death threats, when we had to flee Uganda and come over here and have nowhere to stay. And, you know, it was a very, very scary time. And it was stuff that I survived, bricked over, and built a half-decent life. Meanwhile, survival isn't dealing with it and including it, therefore letting it go. So it kind of chased me in the background. And once I realized what it was, and once in a strange way, the man in me could take care of that little boy that went through that very quickly and very easily, then I wasn't sending the little boy up front to be a soldier and survive this. But I was aware of what was going on, and I could do some very simple in a second work inside and make it okay. And it could be as simple as realizing that it's the boy in me that's up front, being pushed into the world and saying, it's okay, I'm here. And then the boy can go and play and the man can deal with things. And the bonus tell me if I'm getting too cosmic. And the bonus I found with that is as the man is front and center, meeting life, then what I'm putting out into the world is a very different vibe, which is being responded by very different situations. And not only is the man able to respond, but now there's a little boy who's the closest part to God or intuition or nature or whatever it is, that can say, no, don't trust him, or go that way, or whatever it is. So it's working with all these parts in alignment, in their place, rather than, I know how to do this, fear, I'll shove my little boy, maybe some daddy or woman will parent it, and I'll be saved. And it's perpetuating that script. So it comes in so many shapes and sizes. And for me, it's really about breaking it down, and more than anything, feeling it and knowing what it's about, listening to it and allowing it to take its place, or allowing it to pass.
Excellent. And how do you help somebody to understand how to do that? If they were going to do it on their own, how would they actually go about it, would you recommend?
The first way that I generally do it with people is that voice dialogue session, where I speak to them as they are. What do they call it? The aware ego. And then I ask them to move, and I speak with the protector. When did you show up? What was your job? What's your job at the moment? How does it play out? How is he about this, that, whatever it is I need to know? I actually have a conversation with that part. And if I was doing it with you, Jerome, then we might, your protector and I might speak about Jerome, or we would speak about Jerome, because it's not you, it's about you. And then it's back to center. And then I might speak to the fear, or I might speak to the rage, or I might speak to the violent part, or I might speak to the emerging man. And there'd be different conversations with different parts. They feel differently. They have hidden information. They have a memory that the aware ego doesn't have, and they provide a lot of information. And then it's up to the man in the center to be able to, it's almost like a football team, delegate to the right part back, and back to the man, and respond forward. And that's the way it kind of happens on the outside. And again, they always record the sessions, because it's different parts, and it's unfair for them to be in their heads and remembering, as well as in the present and going through it. So that's how they know it on the outside. But a lot of men, once they've had a session like that, get to feel it, get to know it, and it enables them to feel the different parts, communicate with the different parts, and be so much more efficient in their lives, because they're not a panicked boy surviving the world. They're a calm, aware man responding to the world and able to manage. And I would say it's exactly the same with the corporates, because they deal with it inside of themselves, and they can delegate to the teams that are almost different parts of themselves within the organization. So quite an incredibly efficient session, and also an incredibly simple tool. And I remember when I've done it online, I did it with an Italian guy once, and there was a part that was really scared to come out. And this part was literally running his life. And he ended up crawling under the bed with his laptop, because that was the only safe place that this part would speak from. And once it was heard, things made sense, they fell into place. And you could say this is the essence of his fear. But once, and it needed to be heard rather than be survived and run life. Once it was heard, he came back quite differently. He was a lot more balanced, and this part wasn't dominating him. It wasn't his personality. It was taken care of, and he could show up not as a harmless little boy who women fall in love with and then end up mothering, and then it's the same old cycle, but an aware man who can attract other aware adults and really take part in life. So wherever it is, whatever is going on, I would say, listen to it, which is very much the female aspect, rather than survive it and fix it, which is very much the young adult aspect. And once it's heard, then adjust. And for me, it's all about adjusting. And earlier on, you talked about finding yourself. And yeah, I looked everywhere apart from anywhere that was scary and at home. And then I realized that the most efficient way for me to find my current self is to be aware of what is simply not true anymore and let that go. Whoever I'm not, let it go. And then I could be the leftovers really well. Damn good leftovers. You know what it's like after food on the next day, Christmas dinner, and leftovers are the best.
Yeah, it's interesting, Alan, because Kenny, I do something similar. I call it the father and son conversation, because the father has the skills and tools and the maturity and experience to deal with the challenge, where the son is immature, and that's our shadow self. That's our shadow. We call it our shadow self. And when I'm working with a guy, it's like I get him to now become the parent to his shadow self. So, you know, how would you bring up this child who's really scared of rejection? Really, what would you say to that child? And I say, now bring out your shadow side and put him on a chair beside you, or get him to stand there, whatever that looks like to you. And, you know, when I was learning this, and I did it with myself, it was this skinny little Indian kid who had sandals on and this like horrible fringed haircut, and he was standing there. He was my shadow self. And then I was talking as the father to my shadow self, telling this everything's going to be all right. You know, and so I do something similar, and I call it the father and son conversation, but it's really you talking to your shadow self and getting men to do that. And then they're actually now in charge of bringing up their shadow self. They actually now have a child that they're bringing up, because it's the child who's not equipped to deal with the perceptual fears that they're being confronted with. And as you do that, you actually start putting those things to bed, because now you're educating your shadow self on who you need to be, and everything's going to be all right. And the image of that shadow self starts to change. It starts to be, the body language changes within that shadow self and everything. And then you start working together. So if you're going on stage and you've got a fear of public speaking, you take your shadow self on stage with you, and you face the audience together. So you can then talk about your fears. You then can talk about, you know, the things that you will find maybe embarrassing or ashamed about. But when you share them with the audience, the audience actually engage with you more, because you become more relatable. And so you're not this guru, expert, wherever we want to call ourselves on stage, talking at people. We're actually on a journey together, because you're on stage with your shadow self, the both of you, not one side of you. And
as I say, your presentations on stage then really becomes more of a story showing situation, instead of just talking facts and figures, and you're talking heart to heart instead of head to head.
Well said, Alan. Yeah.
Sharing from the being, which means there's space for everyone, an invitation for everyone to meet, rather than, again, that good act and talking at, where there is no engagement in that way. Have you heard of morning pages?
No, not myself.
Morning pages is something that I think there's probably a book or something written about it. But in the morning, one of the first things that some of my clients do is, for 20 minutes, they just write it out, whatever it is, whatever's in their mind. Generally, it's the fear. It might be anger. It might be unfinished business, but whatever's there, they write it out for 20 minutes. And then it's out of them. It's not in their heads. It's not running things. It's separated, and it's there. And it's such a relief, first thing in the morning, to kind of like empty the head and flush it out. And then they might do their exercise or their meditation or whatever it is, or go back to bed. But to separate these parts, otherwise it's all enmeshed and it doesn't make sense. And it's just like, I guess the way that my childhood was, the way that a lot of people have experienced early life, is a certain amount of enmeshment or a certain amount of abandonment. But to break it up, to separate the parts, is worth its weight in gold. And to separate from past, from future, and to be in the present, and to have the ability, especially early in the morning, to just do that shift, maybe from fear into love, from unconscious into conscious, and then to take part from there. It's really handy, and it's like 20 minutes. It does the world of good for so many people.
Yeah.
Another thing with writing actually is accessing the different parts. I think it's quite well known that it's the dominant hand that asks the questions, and then it's the what do you call it, the less dominant, the passive or whatever hands that answers. So with the inner child, it could happen with any parts. And if it's the anger part, then it might be that the pen's held like that and it does that. But it is an easy way to listen, to ask a question and listen, rather than work it out with the limitations and the panic of the head.
So in that particular journaling, you're just using both hands, or you're just writing it for the 20 minutes?
So the 20 minutes is just the dominant hand to empty out. But if it's accessing another part, like there's the dark shadow and the golden shadow as well. So it's to access either of those, or the inner child, or whatever it is. That could be the less dominant hand, because that's coming from creative rather than logical. That's coming from more the unconscious or the subconscious rather than the conscious. But it's also generally a way of getting into the golden shadow of the goodness in my life, the goodness of myself, the life that I want to be living. It's like I said on the radio recently, I don't remember, the question was, how do I change my state so I have the right attitude for New Year? And without thinking, I said time travel. And time travel is know what it is without being attached, and feel it, really feel into it, and bring that feeling into here and now to fuel it there. And the most efficient way that I find to change life is to feel into the new life and to allow it into being. Because again, if I come from fear, then I will attract the things to prove me right, and I'll be going around the same old circle. But if I come from love, it might include vulnerability because I'm out of control. It might include passion and power because it's bigger than I might be used to in my daily life. But if I come from that place, then I can create something and move into it and be that raw, vulnerable, authentic, super sexy man that could really allow the magic to happen. And it is super sexy because it's magnetic, it's bigger, it's alive, and it's ready to take part. And what could be more seductive to a bigger, better life?
Yeah, well, everybody recognises a fake really easy, and when you're not in that state, you're actually in that fake state. But it's when you become authentic, and that, of course, that's going to become a lot more attractive. And yeah, we'll put the term on it. Yes, it is a lot more sexy. But, I know with the journaling, one of the things is the reason for writing it is while you're thinking about it, you're really only in your headspace, and it's that head-to-head conversation that you've got going on, and it's going at a rapid speed, and we're just milling it over and everything else. But when you start to write things down, you can't write as fast as you think, or as fast as you talk. So you have to write slower, and then that slows the frequency down that you're running at, which gets you closer from the mind state into the heart state, where you can start to connect with your emotions. So for people who find it really difficult to express their emotions, this is one of the best ways of doing it.
Yeah. Yes. And I know that.
So I was going to say, so right, Alan, because there's the 4 stages where we think through, beta, alpha, theta, and delta, and most of us run in beta when we're in fight or flight, and our thoughts per second are a lot higher. And the idea of doing that is to actually, you cannot really become a great problem solver or very creative unless you go into your alpha brainwaves. And so by being able to slow down your thought processes and your thinking per minute or per second, you actually then become a better problem solver. But most people stay in fight or flight. They don't know how to access that part of. So when you're working with an elite athlete, you're getting them into that alpha phase of their thinking. But some of them go too relaxed. They go into theta, and you're as a coach, you have to get them pumped up. So some people go too relaxed, and some people go too hyper. So it's that sweet balance. And the other thing is, if we don't know how to access our delta, through having good night's sleep. We can't then as men generate testosterone, and we cannot generate the human growth hormone, which allows us to perform at our peak during the day. So when we don't know how to master our psychology, and this is at the end of the day, we master our psychology if we work on it, because you cannot be fearful when you're in the present. When you're sitting, I'm not in fear now. There could be bombs, but because we're present in a conversation, I cannot be anywhere else. But if I'm not engaged in the conversation, I'll be thinking ahead.
Yeah.
And so being present, and I think you said that earlier, Kenny, it's so important to not be in fear. What do I need to do right now that will improve the quality of my life? And just get on with it, whether it's writing a blog, whether it's calling someone and actually listening to their concerns rather than trying to make a sale. And it's understanding that in business as well. It's being present in the moment. You cannot actually live in fear because you're engaged with what you're doing, especially if you love what you're doing. You use that word love. If you love what you're doing and you're engaged and present in the moment, there's no fear. You know, think back to a sport you were playing, and when you were involved in that sport and in the moment and in flow, there was no fear. Yet everything was still around us, you know, hatred, anger, frustration, love, sadness. It was all around us, but we never felt any of that because we were present and in flow with who we were in the moment, doing what we loved. And that's the thing you've always got to get back to in business. And I find that getting into that alpha phase of your psychology and training yourself to live in that space in the day, you actually become a great problem solver rather than a problem creator.
Because when you're running at that higher frequency and that, you just can't think straight.
Yeah.
Like you've got a whole bunch of things thrown at you at once, you just can't get them together.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to slow down. But the difficulty there for a lot of people, okay, we've got fear. We know that the fear is holding us back, but then being able to step up to it and put the fear aside, because it's not a matter of going, oh, just grab it like this and put it over here. It's something that we actually have to work through.
Yeah, spot on. I'd say initially listen to, because it will generally have a message. And I find that the most efficient way to find out what's really going on, I really like quick things. Quite simply, it's take a breath into it and feel it, and then follow the feeling. And generally, most people in a split second are right back to the scene of the crime. An incident or a situation or a time and space in their lives, and they know which part is saying, accept me, deal with me, complete with me, and I find, a lot of people want to let things go, but I find they need to be included before they can be let go. It needs to move in before it can move out. It wants to be met and heard. And until it's met and heard, it's not going to move on because it hasn't done its job. So in a breath, follow the feeling back. And that's really what needs to be dealt with, something from the past, not some fantasy about the future. It's what from there needs to be included and taken care of. So the path is clear, not to move forward attached to a picture, but to see what life is bringing in the present to respond to, that will quite likely be in alignment with purpose and stuff like that, but possibly not, because I know that the smallest step I take forward, what I thought I wanted and the way I thought I wanted it to be might change. Very likely it does change. And I would say most people don't actually achieve all of their goals or what it is they want, but they generally have something better, and they generally forget about what they thought they want to achieve. And once they've achieved it, they don't even notice because they're chasing something else. And that's just normal and in the bag, which is really annoying for testimonials because they never remember who they were and why they came, because it just doesn't exist anymore.
So when you help someone to achieve their outcomes and everything else, and you're helping them to realize that, hey, you're the one who did this. And they go, yeah, I did. Well, it's hard to get recognition at the end of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Even from them. Yeah. And I know that I was addicted to survival, because I was so sensitive as a child and there was a lot of danger that I would almost need to second guess and be super sensitive to, and this is second guessing, to find what it was, fix it before it happens, so I'd have less of a mess to clear up. And to get into the zone that I don't need to do that anymore through fear, but I could do that through love. My protecting part doesn't need to keep me in the same old story so it knows what to do, because I don't need to do that anymore. I have survived. I am now living creatively. So I could keep him on the committee or as part of this filtration system, and he can feel forward to see anything that might come up that I might need, I as in the man, might need the information about. So I can do things here to make that okay. And there is no fear going on. It's information. And it's about the way forward rather than surviving the past, bringing it up, demanding life forces me to relive it and then surviving it again. So yeah, fear is not bad. It's not the enemy. It's not to survive. It's not to suppress. It's really handy. It's raw creative power that can be used for the good. You know, it's the shadow of everything. There's the dark shadow and there's the gold shadow. And once there's consciousness, then it's how can I use this to move forward? Or what's it saying to me? Where does this want to go?
And that's pretty much the case with every emotion, isn't it? That it's not a matter of getting rid of an emotion. It's knowing when it's appropriate to use that emotion, because we've all got anger, we've got lust, we've got every emotion you can think of. If we've ever experienced it in our life, it's part of us and it's always part of us. But does that fear or that anger control us in the situation?
Yeah, so true, Alan. I think I've had my best workouts after being angry. You see, you know, you take that into your workout, and then you come out amazingly calm. And because if you channel it, like you're so spot on, Alan. It's not about ignoring fears. It's about, is this relevant right now? If someone's died that you're close to, feel sad. You know, it's like that's what it's there for. You know, it feels sad. Having said that, you can then say, look, I'm feeling sad. I'm mourning. I'm grieving. But I'm going to do this now for 2 days, or I'm going to do this for 3 days, and I'm going to get back on with my life. I think it's mastering your psychology to be in control of those emotions, also recognizing them as well, rather than going on for weeks and weeks and weeks, because you're not helping anyone. You're not moving forward. And we know that death, there is no such thing as loss. There is no such thing as death. There's only transformation. We're transforming into a new way of living, or we're making way for someone else to come in to do what they're meant to do. And so part of the psychology is moving that language around. Is like, we're not losing anything. Nothing is dying. Everything is transforming. That's living with nature rather than living through the ego. Yeah.
So, Jerome, what's your take on the whole adrenaline and cortisol and endorphins thing? How do you work with that, either with your clients now or with the old sports stuff?
Well, it's I can probably answer that in a roundabout way. I think. Is there an example you can give me, Kenny, so I can work better off an example?
So for me, adrenaline is more the fear energy, and it's more the toxic, and it's more the panic, where endorphins is more the calm, the accepting, and the creative. And, you know, so many people can create magnificent art when they're in pain. Or I did the same as you. When I was enraged, I took it to the gym, and I was just getting it out of my body rather than building muscle. I mean, handy that I built some muscle as a byproduct. But it's turning that state, because it sounds like... Go on.
No, no. Thank you for that. So, an adrenaline is an action kind of chemical. So we produce a certain amount of adrenaline when we have to get up in the morning. It kickstarts us in the morning, you know. And you know, we're a little bit tired, we're a little bit getting our senses together, bringing it. So we need adrenaline. Now, if we use adrenaline through fear, we're looking through when you're working with that, you're looking through the eyes of pessimism. Whereas if you use adrenaline and you're looking through the lens of optimism, it creates excitement, but you're still producing the same chemical in your body. So it's training someone to look through the lens of optimism rather than look through the lens of pessimism. Now, so what you're doing, so when you're working with someone, so through my Unlocking Your Inner Alpha program, and I do this with women as well, because if they're running a business, they have to unlock their inner alpha. And so when we understand that, what the first thing you do when you're working with a man is going, what is your philosophy as a man? What is it that you stand by as a man? Now, most men don't know their philosophy. We work through that and brainstorm that. What is your philosophy? And there's a framework for doing that. So understanding your philosophy, because ultimately you need channels to become a great decision maker. Absolutely. At the end of the day, good leaders are great decision makers. Now, they don't always get those decisions right, but they're great. They're good at making decisions. To do that, you need a funnel in your psychology to create that. That comes through your philosophy as a man, because if you're not being true to yourself, you cannot unlock your inner alpha, because you're doing what society thinks you should do, or what your team thinks you should do, or what your coach thinks you should do, or mentor, your parents, or your brother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt, your grandparents. You're not channeling it through your philosophy as a man. Now, that's when you start to unlock your inner alpha. The more you do that, you start to look through the lens of optimism, because you're being congruently true with yourself. And that's the first thing you do when working with a man. They have to become great decision makers, but authenticism through that. So you have to be true to yourself first, and then you have to channel that through optimism. And you train yourself in the micro moments, not in the big moments. You practice that through right, this is my philosophy of man. How does that play out now in this phone call that I do not want to make? But if I'm living true to my philosophy, I make the phone call and I'm true to it. Yeah. Or I have to have a difficult conversation with someone. Do I now, this is my philosophy as a man, do I follow through with my decision making through my philosophy?
So it sounds like you take the raw creative energy and you direct it.
You take, whatever your philosophy is to you, it's your form of mantra. It's your form of, this is what I am as a man. This is what I truly believe. And when I follow my philosophy, I'm being congruent. You become what you said earlier, you become a magnet, because very few people know their philosophy as a man. And it's the word always is consistency. What we're trying to do is create healthy, consistent decision makings and habits and routines. Now, we're all consistent in our habits and our routines, but some of them aren't healthy. They're unhealthy. So we want to create more healthy habits, routines, and decision-making skills. You cannot do that unless you know your philosophy as a man and you're being true to who you are. Once you do that consistently, you ultimately unlock your inner alpha.
I think that is one of the most important points, the consistency. And again, looking at the parts, if the man isn't there consistently, then it is the protector's part to come and take over. If the man is a rock and he is always there and can be depended on, then no one else is going to interfere, because there'll be trust, there'll be consistency, it's made safe. And from there, things can extend and respond to anything that comes our way. And it's it's the difference between a surviving boy, who do I need to be, and a solid present man of, it's from am I to I am, and then extending from the I am, from that alignment. But consistency is so the key.
Yeah, and we are consistent. We are consistent, but are they the right consistencies? Because by nature, we're creatures of habit. And it's understanding that, when you are consistent in the healthy ways, what happens is people then know where they stand with you. And when they know where they stand with you, because one of the most challenging things to do in life is say no. Yeah. And I haven't got the time. I cannot do this. I cannot meet you, X, Y, and Z. Saying no to people can be, for a lot of people, can be quite a hard thing to do. And so when people get to know where they stand with you, what happens is because you're consistent in those good routines, habits, and decision-making skills, what happens is your respect level goes up. People respect you because they know where they stand with you. They might not like it, but they eventually respect because you're consistent. You're not saying one thing one day and then doing something different another day. And that's where children get confused growing up when you're saying you go to bed at 7 o'clock and then Monday we did it. On Tuesday go, let them stay up, let them play out longer. We're not consistent in our routines. So then the child goes, I'm confused. I haven't got good leadership around me. So what I'll do is I'll attempt to become the leader because the pack leader is confusing me. Now this is happening at a non-conscious level. So a pack needs a leader, but if the leader is not stepping up just from an age kind of thing, the child will try and become the leader.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're not being consistent in the good routines.
And that's pretty much happening inside of us when we're letting that fear control us and we're not looking into finding out, well, where did it come from? So really, fear is okay. It's there for a reason. It protects us and everything else. But we've got to understand it. We've got to step into our own power so it doesn't control us. So it's using it appropriately in that process. So for a lot of the men out there at the moment who are probably thinking, well, I feel fear and I feel ashamed because I feel fearful. Well, that's a bloody good thing to actually have that fear. To start
being alive.
Yeah, it's being alive, as you say. And then it's a matter of, well, then how do I actually understand it? So before I can change who I am, I first of all have to understand who I am.
Yeah.
Come back and look at yourself first. And then step into it where you understand all those parts that you were talking about, Kenny, and knowing that, yes, the protector's there and that protected you to that point. But if you then want to step into your own power, you've got to be able to do that and let that protector then go off to the future and look at other things for you. And you can just be yourself in that process. So that's all been really great advice for the men that are listening, because I know that a lot of people, when they talk to me about fear, they've gone, well, I should be ashamed of the fear I've got. People say I should be a man and everything else, and they think it's a manhood and all the rest of it. So I think understanding what you guys have just spoken about tonight is very, very beneficial for anybody who listens to it.
I think another really important thing is to know which part is feeling shame. And very often the shame comes from the little boy. So it's not shouldn't shame or demonizing shame. It's taking care of the little boy and carrying on with life. Otherwise, that shame, I have found, has limited so many men's life because they become a shameful little boy, or a little boy that's scared of being blamed, or a little boy of whatever it is. But I find, a cheap line that I use is name it rather than shame it or blame it. How many people can not only be disabled by shame, but find someone to blame for it? I'll rather than taking part in life and being vulnerable, I will get to maybe 2-3 years, I'll do some therapy and I'll find people to blame and I'll make stories. That's not against therapy. It depends on how it's used. And if it's used as a way of blame before moving forward, then it might be an inefficient way. If you need to go through a process slowly and consistently in that way, then fine. But it depends on, is this a tool for blame and therefore justifying where I am and digging my heels into being a victim? Or is it something that I'm using to set me free? So I know I can accept and I can respond and take part.
Yeah, it's true. And just saying going back, I think fear is a natural part of, the oldest part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain. And it is there. But what we must separate is physical danger and perceptual danger. And when it's physical, the ego kicks in. The ego is created around the age of 2 or 3 to protect us from height, speed, gravity. We need it because before that, we'll run into the road. We'll jump off a big wall, So we need to understand the physical dangers. But what is harmful, especially to business people and business and leaders, and that is perceptual fears that we're creating a story about the future that hasn't even happened. How can you overcome something that doesn't exist?
Trying to fix the fantasy.
Exactly, Kenny. So we're creating these fantasies. They actually do not serve us. So when we channel our thoughts through the pessimism lens, we're actually creating stories that actually take us down a downward spiral. They actually do not serve us as human beings. Mastering our psychology is about being able to put that story and go, what a ridiculous story that is. This is a much better story to follow. Because there's no such thing as reality. We're either looking through the lens of pessimism or looking through the lens of optimism. You cannot be looking through the both lenses at the same time. So if it's a perceptual fear, master your psychology. So it's in control of your body and not your body in control of your psychology. And that's the art of peak performance when you're working with athletes, CEOs, leaders, business owners. It's mastering your psychology. And I think the more we work on that, like people work on their bodies, the happier men will become. It's a form of retraining, unlearning, relearning. And that becomes more powerful, and understanding it's all right to have fear if we're physically in harm.
That's right.
If we're not, put those fucking stories to bed and get on with life. You know, it's like, I know I'm a bit of a tough coach with my clients, but it's having those, because it's all bullshit stories we tell ourselves that we're not good enough. You know, we're not going to be accepted. And I've been through all those fears, and it's understanding that as men, you are good enough. You have got fantastic skills and talents, but that you're getting in your own way of those talents and skills.
And I think what you said there before about not just, you know, we look at the worst of us and compare it to the best of them. And that's something that we,
that was spot on.
That's a key point that I think if that nothing else, if you realise that, you would then realise, hey, am I really giving myself a fair go when I'm feeling fear and comparing myself to other men around me? You know,
and that's true, Alan. One of the first things I do in a client, if they say they've got a hero, I absolutely demolish that, because if you're looking up to someone, it means you're looking down to someone as well. So you need to change those physics in your psychology. So you're looking at the best of them compared to the worst of you. And when you're looking down at someone, you're looking at the best of them and the worst of them. So that creates an imbalance in us moving forward, because we're putting people on pedestals. The moment you look at everyone equally is when you just move forward in life and go, the reason that person's great is because they studied for years. If I studied for years, I'd be just as good. Just because they've got a PhD doesn't mean they're any better than you are. They've just committed their time and energy to learning something for a period of time. Don't put them on a pedestal. Admire and respect them for their dedication. Don't bloody put them on a pedestal or make them a hero. It's like you're creating an imbalance in your psychology.
It's always one of the things I hate the most when somebody's interviewing me and they say, well, who are your heroes, or who are the people you look up to? And I go, I don't. You know, who are my teachers? They were expecting me to come back with someone like Nelson Mandela, you know, Richard Branson, something like that. And I go, well, in the surf club, when I was examining the kids for their bronze medallions, I looked at the surf, when I was asking them questions, I was looking at the surf through their eyes. I was learning so much. So my teachers were young children as well. So by looking at the gift that somebody has, what they're applying, how they're using it in that moment, and admire that and take that in and go, yeah, if I can use that knowledge, it doesn't put anybody on a pedestal, because I know when people have put me on a pedestal, I don't like being there. It's uncomfortable. So the best thing for me is never turn around and put me in a pedestal. As I say, like that naughty little boy, you put me in a pedestal, like the boy you put into the cot, they climb out. That's me. I'm back at it. Don't want to be there. And the person you're idolising doesn't really want to be treated that way. If they do, then they've obviously got issues that they need to deal with. But the thing is, don't idolise anybody else. Have a good look at yourself. And if you're going to idolise anybody, idolise who you are and how far you've come from where you started. Compare yourself. Exactly. Compare yourself from your actions and where you want to be. And the other thing is, once you stop doing that, you stop looking down at other people. And that for me was massive. You know, when you stop looking down at people, you become a better person. You become a better server to the community. And I had that. I had the hero up here. My dad was a hero. People that did certain things were a hero. But growing up, I realized they went and shitted in the toilet as well. They weren't heroes. You know, they went to the toilet as well. They had illnesses. They had, you know, my dad was an alcoholic. Both my dads, my biological and my stepfather. Once you realize that they have their default buttons as well, it becomes an equalizer. And
And then you realize people that you're supposedly looking down on have got amazing talents that they're not screaming and shouting about from the rooftops. And you realize, and you listen to them and engage with them, you go, oh my God, I didn't know that about you. I had a perception about you because I've got a hero in my head that I'm actually trying to marry you up to.
Yeah, because you're giving an expectation from them, which is unfair pressure that you're putting on that person as well.
Yeah.
You're going to idolize anybody, idolize the yourself for what you've actually achieved in your life.
Exactly, and how far you've come. That's right.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the reasons that might happen is fear. Fear of being that big, fear of being accepted by that person and then rejected by that person.
Exactly.
And I know that when I had that cycle, the October cycle of the downers, I also had another pattern where I would do well in an industry, or life would be going good and it would be time for the big time. But instead of allowing the big time, I'd kill it. I'd change career. I'd move. I'd do something because I couldn't bear making it. And then the script was, what happens next is I lose it, because that's what happened to us. We lost our lives just when it was pretty perfect. And then would I have it in me to make it again? So without being really conscious about it, I'd let it go so far, and then I'd abandon ship before the bogeyman gets me. So my fear was just running that cycle. But then it was about the next thing after success is this nasty thing, so I will avoid success. But as soon as I realized that, I could change it. And exactly as you said, because I do put people above and below me all the time in that moment, depending on who and how they are in that moment. And if someone is disconnected or a fraud, or, you know, putting on a good act, or just too loud, or something's not right, then I will disengage, because it's not where I wish to meet. And I guess in a way you could say that's putting it below me. But it's just very carefully choosing right here and right now, where and how and what do I wish to engage with. And I'll navigate my way. And it might quite simply depend on my mood, or it might be the crap going on in my head, because I don't go around being perfect in every moment. I guess I go around adjusting as soon as I can, but I choose very carefully in that way. And it kicks in, but it kicks in more with the quality of the person in front of me, rather than the achievements of the people in front of me. And I don't know about your experience in the UK, Jerome, but I noticed that one big difference between when I lived in Australia and when I living in the UK is it's a lot more hierarchical and classist here, where money, title, achievements, you know, there's this huge, even like the type of trainers that you wear, whatever nonsense it is, how big your muscles are, there is a hierarchy that people will either want to put you or put themselves in. And it's always not only bored me, it's plain pissed me off, because I don't like the judgment, I don't like the separation, and I can't see that it does anyone any good. Where I found in Australia, everyone bought their shorts from the same shop, and people were a lot more willing to share and be real, and fumble together rather than separate and compete and pull rank.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You know, and England has got a class system that's stronger than others. However, as human beings, we're always looking for a tribe that we feel safe and comfortable in, and that we can relate to, whether it's money, a standard, a school that we went to, an upbringing. We feel safe in certain environments, and it's like understanding human behavior. And just going back to what you said, Kenny, about, you know, if someone's around you and they're loud or they're this, and we're creating an imbalance in our mind. Well, you know, I'm there down here and this person's up here. What's happening there in our psychology is they're triggering something that we don't like within ourselves. So when someone pisses you off and you get an emotion around something, it's because it's triggering something that we don't like within ourselves. So once I'm working with something, I don't like that person. I go, what is it you don't like about that person? Well, they're loud. Okay. So it's like they're loud and they're taking over. I say to them, well, where are you loud and where are you taking over in your life? I don't do it anywhere. I don't like that. I just don't like it. And then you actually drill them down on it, and they'll find a place where they're doing it and they're pissing someone off. And it's the trigger.
Or in denial of that very often as well.
Yeah.
The denial of their own power and personality.
Exactly, because there is the only reality we see is what's going on through our senses. And we've created that by what we take in through our belief system. And so we delete, distort, and generalize about things based on our belief system. So if we see someone who is loud, we've deleted everything else that's good about them. Because, and then we've generalized why they're like that, and then we've distorted the truth. And so we create this in our psychology, but what's going on, it's the trigger within us that we don't like, because it's our world, our inner world that's being triggered.
I think that could bring up another complete conversation on that one, because we're seeing that in social media every day. We're seeing it with road rage, all sorts of things that are going on. We're seeing it in the playgrounds at school, in the workplace, and everything else. But I think we've, with the conversation we've had, for all the men that are listening, and that, your fear is okay. It's natural to have it, and it's physical. It's not a matter of, that's right. It's not a matter of saying to it, right, that I should be ashamed of that. But it's a matter of, you were saying before, Kenny, understanding the background of it and everything else. Is it still serving you? Is it not serving you? And then moving on from there.
Well said, Alan.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your time tonight, gentlemen. It's only the three of us tonight. We had a fourth person turn up. They sent a message saying that the thunderstorms had just hit their place. And so they couldn't speak with the rattle of the thunder and everything else outside. So, but it's been really great having a conversation with both of you, and we'll have to get you onto more panels.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alan, and thank you, Kenny. It was really nice having the discussion around the campfire with you. And as I say, Alan, I just got so much respect for you, buddy, and what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And to everybody who's listening here today as well, as I always say when we have these discussions, you've heard these men talk about what they do, their background they've got and everything else. The reason I'm saying to everybody, get in touch with them. If you've got questions in your life and you want to find some solutions and everything else, do you just pick up the yellow pages and ring a professional, or a psychologist or whatever, or do you go to somebody who you have an understanding to the way you feel and everything else, that this person can actually help you? So if that's the case, get in touch with Jerome, get in touch with Kenny, have a chat with them. It doesn't have to be done in the campfire. Take it to personal conversations and take it outside the campfire as well. These talks are all here to help all the men that are listening in. And I thank you two men for coming along and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you. Hang out. Cool.
We'll see everybody on the next Campfire Project. Bye-bye for now.
Lovely.
Take care, Alan. Bye, Kenny.